Hey, nice to meet you.
Hey, how's it going?
So, you mentioned yesterday that your biggest issue was Terran against Terran, correct?
Yeah. TvZ is starting to be a close second, though.
Okay. We'll start with TvT, and if at any time you want to change it and say, hey, let's shift focus, be sure to tell me.
Okay.
Um, how well do you feel you understand the matchup? Do you want to do you have a good build you think you can work with, or do you just want to start from scratch?
Um, Probably start from scratch. I've got a bunch of different builds. I have them set up in a different spreadsheet that I look at before the game. Um, and I don't really have success with any one of them regularly.
Okay. So we're going to I'm going to host a custom game and I'm going to show you a standard opener that you can do. And then from there, when we get to specific parts, I'll pause the game and explain variations based on what you scout on what you must do. And this should be a build that you can use every time. I use it every time and then deviate based on what you scout. But it is important that you change it based on what you scout.
Okay. Is this your two Reaper expand?
It's not. It that is a good build. I like it a lot. It's weak to some things, but strong against others. Personally, this is kind of my safe build, I
Okay.
would say. So the two Reaper is more of a kind of safe, but more focused on harassment build. This one is more focused on I'm going to deny your aggression, and I'm going to get the advantage through macro, and then I'll come back and kill you later. It's not meant to flat out win you the game. However, in some transitions, it will.
Okay.
So let's hold on a second. I don't think it will let you watch me play against a computer, will it?
I should be able to beat Observer, no?
It's not currently allowing me to set it up. Let's see here, set you over here, add AI,
There you go.
and then remove from lobby. Ha! And we're just gonna set them to very easy. So from scratch, my reasoning is in TvT is I go, okay, I'm very afraid of Reapers. That's my first number one thing. Why am I afraid of them? Well, if you open up one Reaper, then it comes down to macro. I like to keep my Reaper a little bit back. But if you do that, then you can't get across the map at times and scout specific things or take advantage of things. So, scouting is hard. And that if you go with a Reaper, but sometimes you get lucky, the game works great, or so on. It's kind of like a hit and miss. I do like the Reaper openings, but if they go like a safe opener, then the Reaper is kind of useless. You're a little bit behind in tech, which isn't that bad, but I always like to be ahead. I like my builds. I'm very proud of them, and one of the things I like the most about them is either getting the advantage through aggression or through super macro.
Mhm.
And that's kind of like how I like to play my tournaments or so on. I like to be aggressive, but I also like to be super defensive and kind of change the entire pace of the game. And
Okay.
in on ladder, it's better to be like it favors aggression. Ladder favors aggression unless you can deny any attack.
Right.
Because at any given time, there can be like 10 different things that can kill you. But if you're good at holding 8 of them, you're going to start winning. But there are going to be a game or two where you're just going to lose.
Yeah.
And that'll come with practice and time. So with this build, I really like to scout on the supply depot, regardless of the map. If it's a big map, I'll get to your base before you will, and I like to do 12 barracks and 13 gas. If it's a small map, I get to see everything inside of your base really early on, and if it's a two-player map, I will always check my natural to see if there's something building there.
Okay.
Sorry, you had a question?
I was gonna say, what about two-player maps? But you answered that.
Yeah, one of the reasons you scout at that time is to check for proxies and to get to his base on time before Reaper ever comes out. And it's very important you do this on a two-player map because it's the very reason why we go a. So we just, we kind of see him, we kind of poke around, whatever. So now we're just going to pretend that SCV is going to die in a second, so we're just going to send it to the corner.
Okay.
So it's very important that we get the gas on 13. And we got it slightly late because I was talking a little bit. But let's say we saw a Reaper. I'm like, oh crap, it's an 888. All we know is that he's got like 10 SCVs and we could be somewhere on the map. It's a two-player map. I immediately drop down a tech lab. Right after, I don't get a marine. This will make it so the Reaper is in my base before my Marauder is finished. But that's irrelevant. You would use your SEV in the middle of the map to kind of look for the proxy, but you just start the Marauder right away. They're gonna come out close to the time. Just micro an SEV. SEV. If you lose one, it's not the biggest deal. The Marauder will come around the same time you lose one SEV and chase him away. And then you just get two Marauders at the most. If you want, you can drop down a second barracks. You do it like right about now, and then but I'm not going to. Let's see, I'm playing safe. So you chase away the first Reaper, and then you go attack to their base. They're not going to have anything that can stop us except for SCVs. You trade, you kill an SCV here or there by just microing back and forth. Your next Marauder is to defend. And then, let's say, okay, look, he's given up. The rush is over. Until he stops making Reapers, I keep making Marauders. Let's say he stopped. Okay, expansion. Move that over. I'm going to get a factory right above here. Make Marines. And the gas geyser. And now we're kind of in a good place. We're going to get slightly supply blocked, but it's fine. Because we were just going to cut an SCV. So let's say we only need two Marauders. This is kind of what we're looking at. I mean, no other Terran's going to have Marauders, so... and then you're safe. You've successfully transitioned. You're on your way to a Cloak Banshee build. You got an Expo underway. You've got your supply depots right about the nice time. And you got your two gas. If you're going for a Cloak Banshee build, you want your gas geysers to be mining before the factory is done, preferably. Get a Hellion to scout, and then yeah, you can go from there, and then you just do the Cloak Banshee, and then eventually, let's say we've done the whole Cloak Banshee thing, alright, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna drop two factories, and we're gonna use this add-on that the Tech Lab has for one of the factories. And then we get a reactor, and so I'm kind of, pretending we already have it. And then a tech lab, and then look, we've got three add-ons, and we go from there.
So do you usually make one Banshee or two?
If you go for Cloak, you want one Banshee, then you go into the Raven. If you don't go for Cloak, you still want to start off with one and get the Raven, but then you can decide. If they aren't making Vikings, you can go more than one easily. If they are making Vikings, but they have no detection, no missile turrets, and no Raven, then you can go more than one.
Okay.
But you have to get the second Raven or the Raven right after, just in case they go for their own Banshee, so that your Raven is done around the same time the Banshee reaches your base, so that you can use the auto turret or the Marines that you have built to chase it away. But that's just showing you how I would do against the Reaper opener on a two-player map, or any type of cheese where you see like you have very few stuff at home. I would go the Marauder way, maybe do a wall off, because they can kite SCVs. If they go like a Marine SCV all in, you can just kite them back, until you finally reach your SCVs, and then you attack with your SCVs. You don't have to pull them until he's close to your Marauders. So you can take out 5 or 6, but that's just how we would handle that scenario.
Okay. And how would you handle, one of the things I see really common is the tube tank push?
Two tank push. Are you talking about with the Raven, the Marines?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll go into that one right now.
Okay.
So we're just gonna invite you, remove you from lobby, add AI. Okay. So that is how we would transition if we see any type of cheese in the early game. And now, otherwise, here's how we would play the game. This build is designed to punish specific things. So if you go for early siege tanks yourself, you will hold off most all-ins, except for you're going to be weaker to Banshee. So the more gas you invest in your defense, the weaker you're going to be to Banshee. But the more minerals you invest in your defense, the slower your expansion is probably going to be. Also, it leaves you open to a timing push, because the more minerals that you have in your defense, the less likely it is you're able to hold a Marine tank Raven push. Now, is that push going to come before the Raven, or is there not going to be a Raven? That kind of changes the pace and what you will need to do. or if you will need to pull SCVs really,
Mhm.
and or what you're able to do, in fact. So it doesn't really matter when you place the first depot on 4-player maps, but on 2-player maps, put them at the front. You
Okay.
want to see if anything comes up. So we're gonna do the same type of build, and what I've been really enjoying is Marine Hellion openers. It allows you to use the Hellions for aggressiveness.
So
Go ahead.
let's go back for just a second. So you do the Marauder opening if only if you scout Reapers.
Yes, only if I think there's going to be a Reaper problem. If he
Okay.
goes for 2 Barracks Reapers, or a Proxy Cheese Reaper. If he goes for 1 Barracks Reaper, then it's not necessary.
Okay.
If it's on time, if it's a 12-12.
And now one thing I'm unsure of for if he's going 2 Rax Reaper with a proxied Rax, how
Mhm.
do you tell that from him
The orbital
saving them on?
command is 5 to 10 seconds later than yours.
Okay. All right, makes sense.
Or they might be trying to get an extra SCV too, but the biggest thing is the orbital command is later than yours.
Hmm. So that should be the first tip.
Yep.
Okay.
That's usually the only information you have. If you're really unsure, then you can just pop out 1 Marauder without concussive shells, and then use the add-on later on for the starport. Then you just have an earlier starport. Your second supply depot should always be near an edge, so you can see if they lift like a factory into your base or scout for drops,
Hmm.
or see a Banshee on time. There's 2 ways you can follow this up. You can either go for earlier Hellions by getting the factory and then the reactor, but my personal preference is getting the reactor and then the factory. But you don't actually get the reactor until you have 2 Marines. The 2 Marines are for shutting down Reapers. So there's the reactor. And then we can go for a command center before the factory, but that also makes you weaker to some things. So this right here, this is a pretty safe build. Um, everything is a slightly delayed economy-wise, like your expansion, because we went for the 13 gas. If you want a sooner expansion, you just mine only 2 from gas at a time at 13 if you think it's safe.
Okay.
So that's completely your discretion. It just means that your gas tech is going to be a little later, but everything else will be fine.
Right.
We are going to get the supply depot before the starport. And we're not going to produce anything from the factory yet. So because we want it to be safe, we trade 1 round of units to be able to drop all of our stuff. As you can see, like the starport, we now can't produce anything. So we are safe against all-ins, but this part is a little wonky right there.
Hmm.
And then we resume once we have the minerals. So now we're fine again, but we needed to play catch up and get the expansion. If we see a marine tank kind of play, we can just get a Viking or a medevac and try to overpower him with marine Hellion medevac. We can go do like a Hellion drop with four Hellions in his main, and we defend with a bunker back home, and then if he gets too close or overzealous, we just pull SEVs. Like we keep building up the marine count and the medevac count, and then we just pull SEVs and try to crush the attack. This because his reinforcements will be at home defending. You should be scanning. If you don't think it's Banshee, you should be scanning like with your second command center when it finishes, so you can see what kind of tech he's going. Is he going mech? Is he going bio? A single Viking after the medevac. You want the Viking. So like right now the orbital is done, I scan. That's kind of where you want to scan, so you can see how many are in gas. I can't see the gas geysers, but I can see how many mining, what's at his front. You want to get a good angle on it. It's different for each map. That's kind of where you want to be. Once you
Hmm.
have a healthy marine count, which is usually around the time you have like 3 Hellions. So at this stage you can decide like, okay, what do I want to do? Like, do I want to drop these 3 Hellions? Do I want to drop some marines or what? So that kind of helps you pick and choose your defense. You're getting Tech Lab, and then you get 3 gas geysers. So this is about when you have 3 Marines. So about 7 minutes and 45 seconds. And the reason for this is now you have a healthy number to help hold off Banshees. You have a healthy number to hold off his Marines, and now you're producing 2 Hellions at a time, slightly before his push comes, and you're getting a Viking, and then right around the same time the Viking is done, you can swap that over, and then you have all the gas and production you need to keep producing. So like if he doesn't have detection, I would go Cloak Banshee like that, and I just let the Hellions sacrifice for a second and go back up. But if he does have protection, then I would go like this. You know, I get a second reactor and I would produce a Raven, and then what I would do is swap the starport over to the barracks so I can produce 2 Vikings at a time and 2 Hellions, and then another factory so I can get Blue Flame, 3 Hellions at a time, and 2 Vikings, and I have a Raven now. Will make me pretty safe. You don't have to worry about a third yet. You should only focus on getting a third if he's getting a third. If he's sacrificing units to grab a third, you can go like, okay, I'm just not going to make Hellions for a second, and then I'll grab my third, and then I'll resume.
And how do you usually scout that with the drop, I guess?
You can do a drop. You can scan him. Usually you'll see it when he scans what he's going. Is he going for an attack? Oh, I have to prepare. You can have a Marine at each expansion if he's going for a third. You should kind of be a little bit on the map. And then you'll see that the moment I bring this over, it's gonna kind of work up or even out all the things I have to get. Blue Flame, and then we're just slightly behind in what we can afford there, and there it is. So now we got everything. We're almost full saturation in both bases, and we're getting the key things we need to get total map control. So this is a map control build, and then we can kind of, okay, there are no drops coming. Let's say there are drops coming, so he's in the bottom left. We're going to keep our Vikings there, and we're going to send a Marine up top to scout for drops, and then we just go ahead and move around the map, try to see what we can pick off.
Okay.
And that'll be our third. And then our goal is just to kind of poke at his third, not lose the Hellions until we can overpower him, and then we can get +1 attack, we can drop a third factory, and then use the barracks for a tech lab, and then, we got that 3 barracks, 1 reactor production for the starport that we were talking about earlier.
And now once you get that third base up and running, how many factories do you go up to?
3.
3
You don't want to go up to 4 until it's finished.
Okay.
And then you build them 1 at a time, but once you're at 4, you might be able to make 2 depending on how your macro is going, but you don't want to go up above 6 on 3 base.
Okay.
So yeah, we got pretty much everything we could want here. You don't need to get an engineering bay until you think there's an air threat, either Banshees or drops, so don't worry about it. The build should flat out defend you against everything if you scout it properly. Or almost everything. I mean, I'm sure there are some things I don't know that could be cooking up somewhere, but it's pretty good in that regard. These Vikings here, they help stop a lot of drops, and then using the barracks once you're done making these 3, that's pretty good in that regard. Once the orbital is done, then you want the gas geysers, and you want to make siege tanks. Like your first siege tank should be about 11 minutes, and then if he's going, like, let's say he's kind of air heavy, or if he doesn't have a lot of, how do I phrase this? Okay, so I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this. Okay, so if he doesn't have a lot of anti-air, you only need a few Vikings and you make medevacs to drop your Hellbats on top of his army. And then you can get 2 Thors as long as he isn't being aggressive, and the 2 Thors will soak a lot of damage for you when you have a lot of siege tanks. And they're also pretty good defensive-wise. They help snipe medevacs. They're pretty good at killing, Banshees. If he's going for Banshees, let's say he's playing mech, they're pretty good at breaking small siege positions. So getting these 2 on top of the many Hellions that you have, you should be able to break some siege positions. So you're pretty mobile. You can do drops, so your army's pretty robust at this stage. You can get 2 more factories because we can afford it. 1 missile turret at each base. And our third is saturated. Our factories are on their way. Let's now grab our fourth. And the workers from our main, we're going to be taking half of them and half of our natural and using them to saturate the fourth. We're not making any more SCVs past the third saturation unless he kills some. So we're making just a few more. So it's 10. So we want 6 total. You know, so we're just making. We got them queued up, 2 in each. And then you got kind of this really robust army. Your Hellbats go in the medevacs. 1 reactor, 1 tech lab, and there you go. And then you can also, once your vehicle weapons is halfway for +2, you can drop another armory. You can do +2 and +3, or +3 and +1 armor at the same time.
Okay.
So
when did you drop that armor? I didn't notice that.
Oh, we drop it around the same time we drop the fourth.
Factory.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way we kind of want to engage the army. So remember, we're gonna have less medevacs if he has anti-air. We only need just like 6 or so Vikings. We're pretty maxed out at 16 minutes. We got okay upgrades. We got a healthy base, lots of economy. Always scan ahead. You want to know what he's got. Your fourth should always be a planetary. Sometimes I don't do that. It's because I'm being greedy. Don't make that mistake. It costs me a lot of games. You know, and then whenever you see his army, you kind of just want to drop on top of him with the ones you do have. The Hellbats. Let's pretend that was his army. You know, but your army has to be engaging him. You gotta force him to run away. So yeah, everything works about together.
All right.
And stopping when you've got the third up, you're not gonna make too many SCVs. The build will hard counter many things just by itself. The only thing you have to do is scout and act appropriately.
Gotcha. Seems simple enough when you do it.
Well, I mean, you're gonna have a lot of reference point because now you got the replays too to look over it, and then you're gonna be able to see it on YouTube to kind of see what I say over again.
Right.
And a lot of it, like TvT, is a lot of okay. So let's say I go a Banshee opener. My thoughts are like, oh, does he have a Raven? How fast did he get a Raven? Did he go gas first? Did he not go gas first? He went gas first. I went gas first. Banshee isn't that bad, but my Banshee's gonna get there about the same time his Raven gets there, which means that my Raven's gonna get there about the same time his Banshee gets there. So I have to micro my Banshee and defend against his Banshee. But let's say, oh, all of a sudden he did go gas first, but he didn't go for a Banshee. Instead, he went for a really fast Marine Hellion drop. This is important to know because then I gotta scan it like 6 minutes. 6 minutes, 20 seconds around the same time your expansion might finish. If you didn't go for a Banshee, or if you go for a Banshee, then you gotta save a scan and scan his base and go, oh, wait a second, this is Marine Hellion. I can't move out this fast with my Banshee. I'm just gonna die to the drop. I have to keep it back, and then I have to defend it, and then I have to use my Banshee. But what if he has engineering bay at that time and is getting missile turrets? So there's like this huge fest of like, there's so many different builds, and you can counter a build. Like my build is counterable probably by doing a cheesy 1-1-1 off of gas first that's proxy. You could probably kill this build doing that, but not if I scout it. And especially if I'm making Marauders and I'm using an SUV to kind of look around, your ground army isn't going to be very competitive. So I can just kill your, if I scout it in time, I can just kill you. So it shouldn't be flat out die to anything unless the person absolutely knows what the counter is, which I'm not sure what it would be yet. So that's a plus. It's very defensive. You sacrifice economy for defense, and then you make up for it in the later stages by playing kind of greedy. And then you have map control, so you can take it back. Like a lot of people go, oh, I have to expand when he does. That's not always correct. Or I have to expand before he does. You can expand at the same time, or you can expand later, as long as you do economic damage, then it's irrelevant. One of my builds against Protoss is where I expand 2 minutes behind them, but I do these super fast Widow Mine drops with tunneling claws, and they always take out like 10, 15 workers, and then the game all of a sudden is even. So it works itself out. If you have the capabilities to harass, you can do it to make the game even, or you can wait for them to make a mistake and walk into the middle of the map with, like, let's say they have a few Marines and a siege tank, and you have like the same amount of Marines but a medevac and some Hellions. Then you'll just crush him with the splash on the Marines, and then your Marines will take out his tank.
Okay.
So there's plenty of opportunities for you to wait to move for him to move out, because you're going to have a very mobile mass Hellion army. And then eventually you'll get that Raven. So if it goes for like Marauders, you have the Point Defense Drone, or you have a Hunter Seeker if it goes for Siege Tanks. You just keep trying to snipe what you can. Don't engage him across the middle of the map. And then when he gets right close to your ramp, not when he's there, but like right before, you can either Hunter Seeker missile his army, drop some auto turrets, or you can send some SCVs out and drop some auto turrets and just crush it. You lose some workers, fine, but just go counterattack. Um, there's a lot of different things that you can do to hold off, but the biggest things to remember, like, okay, so Mass Reaper, Marauder, Siege Tank, when is he pushing out? I have to know. Do I have to pull workers? But if he's going for Siege Tank play, you're better off not making double Hellions until you've crushed the first push. If he's not moving out, then you can go for double Hellions, and the reason for this is Hellions have a really hard time against Siege Tank Marine, but Marine Medevac has a really easy time as long as you split up and engage him when he's not sieged, because then he'll take a lot of damage. It's very easy to produce more Marines than him in that regard, and then just make a few Hellions at a time. Like, you'll make, instead of swapping at 3, you can swap at 6 Hellions that you made one at a time, and you'll have twice the amount of Marines. But then all you use the Hellions for is sniping their Marines at an angle, uh, pretty much being the same thing as a siege tank shot to their Marines.
Right.
But yeah, and then you gotta spread up a little bit. So this build should get you pretty high up with good scouting and micro. It'll just have to come with practice. You're gonna have to learn these timings for yourself too. But some of the things are like Banshee. They can be at your base like 6 minutes 30 seconds. They can be in your base. And that depends though. If it's gas first, they can be. If it's not gas first, it's gonna be another minute later. Um, Marine tank, they usually cross the map around 7 minutes 30 seconds, 8 minutes, but the sooner they move out, the less they're going to have, the weaker it's going to be. Unless they can set up a contain at the bottom of your ramp, then it's really strong.
Right.
You never want to let siege tanks siege up at the bottom of your ramp if you can help it. You can let them get close, but the moment they siege, you better have some SCVs with you or the ability to surround him. Um, you don't have to get an engineering bay right away if you see a Banshee. As long as you have a Raven and something to attack the Raven, like 8 Marines or a Viking, then you're fine. The only time you need a missile turret is when you are at your expansion, then your main will need one. That's it. Your natural won't need one because your Raven will be there defending. If you lose the Raven, and you know he has the capabilities of Cloak Banshee, make sure you get a missile turret.
Okay.
Do you have any questions so far?
No. All seems pretty straightforward so far.
Yeah. Um, Against Bio, expect to be a base behind. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Your third base should be relatively at the same time, but you might not be able to land yours. Again, not a concern. Just get your third before he gets his fourth. You want it like in between there. Let's say his third just dropped down. It's already in orbital. You got 2 minutes, 3 minutes to take your expansion because your units are more powerful. Just don't die to drops. Keep your Vikings, 2 with your army, the rest around the perimeter. Don't go overboard on missile turrets unless you're on 3 bases already. Then it's fine. You can get a lot of missile turrets, 3 or 4 per base, but not before, because it's more important that you get your third base and be vulnerable to drops than it is for you to be building your third base and not be vulnerable, because the extra minerals you'll get from your third will cover the cost of the missile turrets.
Okay. Now, a lot of times when I take the third base and I'll move out with my army, or even the bio player will split up.
Mm.
What's the best way to deal with that? Because I've tried leaving like 3 tanks at my third, and 2 tanks or 3 tanks at my expo, um, and that never seems like enough. Should I use Widow Mine? Should I use?
I find that the units you leave behind will never be enough. They're just there to stall for time.
Mhm.
In my main, I like to leave a siege tank and 2 or 3 Hellbats. And then Vikings will be trying to kill the medevacs. And then once the medevacs are gone, the threat is a lot easier to deal with, because you know they're not getting out, they're losing the units.
Right.
And then I keep some units at my third. I like to keep 3 or 4 tanks, a missile turret or two, and just a few Hellbats. And the rest is like a moving army.
Mhm.
Most of your units that stay back to defend will be at your main and at your third. Odds are you'll at your fourth it's going to be a planetary, so you only need 2 or 3 siege tanks at the most. And you always want to attack in the direction where you're most vulnerable, because that means that you're closer to defending that base. So on Frost, if I was in the top left corner and my opponent is in the bottom right, my planetary fortress is probably going to be the top middle. The reason being is that my natural is going to be weaker, and I want my siege tanks to be able to cover my natural and my main instead of my main and my third. So my siege tanks will be on that tiny rock-like area, that you can break down, kind of like a trail of siege tanks, one in the middle line, one above the command center, then one right under the rock that we kill, then one above the ramp on the rock where we kill, and then one at my natural. And that'll be a pretty good siege tank spread. It'll cover most drops that are coming in, and then I'll keep like a tank and some Hellbats in my main, and then Vikings near my main, and then the rest of my army will be at my third. And that way, if he attacks into my natural, I already have 2 or 3 siege tanks covering that space and the way to my third. Most of my army will be at my third, and just a few to stop the drop in the main. And then once I have it, I can drop like 4 or 5 missile turrets in different locations to help, so I need less units home, and then I would attack from the bottom side of the map and make my planetary the top middle base and keep 1 siege tank there so I can fire up just in case he puts something there.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, if you attack from the bottom side, if he wants to go around your army, he's going to hit your fourth, which is the planetary. And if not, it's going to be greater distance. So you always want to move past your vulnerable point to attack. And then you're past your vulnerable point that's close to you to attack. So like, let's say habitation station, I spawn on the left side. My third is definitely going to be the one right below the natural, and my planetary will be the fourth. Alright, which is going to be the gold, because it's too far out for
Mhm.
me. Like, I can move past it, which is fine. So like, if we're playing super defensive and we can't get the fourth easily, the third is going to be an orbital. But sometimes what I'll do is like, even against Protoss and Zerg, is if I'm not confident I can hold the third, I will make it a planetary and then make the fourth, the gold, my orbital, and then I'll just constantly attack towards the watchtower. But if the planetary is at the gold, then I'll mostly focus on his expansions because I know that it's safer that way.
Right.
So, just food for thought. Wherever your planetary isn't, odds are your armies should be near there and attacking in that general direction.
Okay.
Any other questions, or did you want to focus on something else or stay focused on TvT? Or oh, it seems he disconnected. We're gonna have to give him a minute, guys.
person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable.
Let's give it 1 second. Hey there.
Hey, sorry about that. Not quite sure what happened there.
I don't know. But welcome back. Did you have any more questions about TvT? Anything else, maybe? Or
No, I don't think so. Like a lot of the troubles I have with TvT are have been basically, me getting out macroed and things like that. So,
mhm.
or just not being safe to something in the beginning. So I think that build will help me out a lot.
Okay, that's good. What else would you like to focus on? Terran against Zerg?
Yeah.
So, going from this from scratch idea, I had a recent inner team kind of like tournament thing,
Hmm.
and I faced Aeon Tech, who is commonly top 20 North America Zerg Grandmaster,
Hmm.
in quite a few games, and we can take a look at one or two of them before we run out of time to see what my thought process is.
Okay.
And we can go into the last game. If I recall right, it's pretty good.
Okay. And while you're bringing that up, how big an impact is the servo change for your TvZ?
I would imagine it's a great impact, but I haven't had a chance to play with it yet.
Ah, okay.
But I definitely am excited for it. I've just been oddly busy the last 2 days, so
Gotcha.
let's take a look. So I like many different styles. My thought process is mutas. I like Thor Hellbat, roaches, hydras. I like Widowmine Siege Tank. Muta roach. I like to skip Hellbats because there's not much for them to do there. So I like to invest my minerals in turrets and my gas in a healthy mix between Thors and siege tanks. And I need less Thors as long as I'm staying defensive because I'll have more turrets because I won't have Hellbats. So the less Zerglings, the less Hellbats I'm going to have, unless I want to all of a sudden max out and do a timing push. I'll go, I think I can kill him. I'll throw everything I have into units, and if it comes to making Hellbats, then I'll do that too. But otherwise, if I'm being defensive, I want to be smart with my minerals and my gas. Also,
Okay.
if you cut Hellbats, you're going to have more resources for orbital commands. So in this particular game, we're going to see Widowmine Siege Tank, because he went Roach Hydra. We weren't positive at first that he was going Roach Hydra, and he's been very aggressive. He's been all-inning me a lot.
Hmm.
So I want to be safe. So this is my safe build. I'm going to be safe against you as long as I scout. Again, very important. So kind of wall off. I really like to get my gas at 15 supply when I do this build. It's
Okay.
slightly delayed right now, but 15 it means that you can get the factory and a siege tank before any all-in can hit you. Any. Um, I don't think I've ever lost to an all-in around the siege tank timing before with this build. No roach baneling
Hmm.
bust or anything like that. If you see like a one base roach baneling, all you would do is put a bunker here and put a bunker here,
Hmm.
and then maybe do some like SimCity, but one base roach baneling bust you can hold off with 2 or 3 bunkers and a handful of marines.
Okay. Yeah, just recently, it seems like every Zerg is doing that early bandling bust on me.
The one base,
Uh, yeah, usually.
what you can do against that is yeah, just the depot thing, but also you can kill the rocks down below the ramp and then place down like an engineering bay and a bunker at the bottom and have one unit in the bunker, one unit behind the bunker, and then they've got to break through 2 walls.
Hmm.
That's another thing you can do, or just keep throwing on bunkers and don't let them, get banlings on your SCVs, and then you're fine. Just split the SCVs
Okay.
because one bunker just gives your marine an extra 400 HP, which is huge.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to wall off completely. I don't mind that. It's not the worst idea, but don't count on it. Like on this map, what I would do is like you can see the reactor. A factory should fit right next to it, or a bunker. So I'll put a bunker there, and then if it kills the top depot, I'm fine, because there's going to be a bunker blocking it. And then under the barracks and supply depot, I'll make like a factory right under the supply depot, and then put a barracks in between the supply depot and the
Top ledge.
no, yeah, yeah, the supply depot on the top ledge, and then on the other side the factory and the barracks.
Mhm.
And then it'll be like all I spent was 2 extra supply depots and a bunker, and now it's really harder for you to come up the ramp, and I'll put a bunker on the opposite side of the factory and then one by the main, so I have 3 bunkers, 2 supply depots extra, and we can salvage the bunkers later on.
Yeah.
So you just gotta be smart with your SimCity. It's not like I have to have heavy buildings blocking off the ramp. Just I could go with more layers for him to break through. That would have worked too.
That makes sense.
So here, I really like the reactor before the factory. The reason being is that a lot of people like to do like a shit ton of Zerglings at 6 minutes, and here comes the factory. So once the bunker is about to finish, I quickly get in it. You know, you want to be safe, and then I rally over. You want to get everything inside the bunker, and then right kind of behind it, a little bit split up so the Zerglings can't surround you very easily. Get a supply depot. Here comes the command center, and I can give you this replay too on Skype so you can study the build.
Okay. I'd appreciate that.
And then the tech lab, and then the SUV who makes the tech lab is, makes the command center. This is the build that Day 9 casted for me, with some minor tweaks. So you can also look at the Day 9 daily, and he can go into a lot of depth for you on what I'm doing. If in case I forget something. And then you got a lot of Marines, your siege tanks coming, you got your 3rd command center, so you go for double refinery, so you can explode in your buildings and stuff. You can do like a timing attack if he grabs his 3rd pretty early, and no units, but it kind of depends on what the Zerg is doing.
And you said the Day 9 daily went over this. Which daily was that? Was that recent?
It was and it wasn't. I think it was about 3 months ago.
I don't know how I missed that one.
Yeah, if you just Google Day 9 HTOMario, you'll find it.
Alright.
And then the 3rd is going to be a planetary. In this case, they're not supposed to see it. You're supposed to try to distract him if you can. But from him seeing this, I saw that there was an expansion coming, and I lifted it too late. I didn't see the expansion coming. I knew there was a big attack coming. I lifted it too late. I just wanted to bait in more shots, but I fucked up. I shouldn't have gotten that, and I should have been insanely far ahead. So now you get to see what happens if you aren't insanely far ahead and they do this type of all-in. If you see, and then 2 factories. If you see any type of muta play, you've got an early engineering bay because you've got an early planetary fortress, so you can get drop down missile turrets. This is a great build to punish like 2 base muta because you got a lot of marines and you can get missile turrets. And you can get the building armor. I believe I have the building armor. Do I? Upgrades. Which one is that? No? Well, you can get it if you want, but in this case I opted for earlier factories because he was being aggressive. So 2 armories, and then I rebuild my 3rd. I had to wait because the timing is very serious. Whether I have the 3rd or not, I need these missile turrets and these units and these upgrades around the same time because otherwise I can't defend. You know what he might go. And I already knew he was an aggressive player, so I'm being very defensive. Your siege tanks shouldn't be on the ledge here unless you know it's not Mutalisk just yet. The missile turrets are there just in case, and so are the Marines, just in case he is coming with Mutas. But I wasn't expecting it, so that's why I still have a lot of tanks at my ramp. So I'm getting some Thors just in case of Mutalisk, and some Hellbats, and I'm getting my upgrades. I'm sneaking a base. It's never bad to sneak a base, to be honest, on big maps. You should almost always just do it. On ladder, people just won't notice. Especially at lower levels. If they do, I mean, they're either pretty lucky or they're probably hacking. And I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but it's really hard for low leagues to look for expansions early on,
Yeah. Yeah, I've had some success with it.
Yeah. If you have a healthy tank count, 3 or 4, you can go up to 4 Thors to help defend in case they go mutas. Here I kind of see, oh, that's a lot of roaches. And we want our third. You can see our third is far more delayed than his, despite the one we have at the top. We're muling that one pretty heavily, but we still have to be careful. Our siege tanks are only going where we can defend. You lose your army in this situation, you die. It's game over. So we just have to be careful. And we see hydras, and then the moment we see hydras, you'll see, oh, okay, roach hydra. I'll just go Widowmine siege tank, and I'll just need an explosion of factories. So that's kind of what you see now. I'm getting a lot more factories. So if he stays on Mutalisk circling, I don't need more tanks. I can just go Thor Hellbat with the tanks I have. You only need 3 or 5 at the most. And if you go Swarm Hosts, it's kind of the same thing. You only need enough to kill the Locust, then you can move around the army and counter him and crush him. And then the Roach Hydra, I'm a really big fan of Siege Tank Widowmine, especially in this situation. I'm still making some Hellbats right now because I really want to secure my third, so it's like I need an explosion of units to kind of buffer for my Siege Tank since I have less of them. And then in a moment you'll see me... Oh, and I needed the gas for the upgrades. And the factories. So you can see I'm pumping out a lot of factories because I want to make a lot of Widow Mines. And then I have the gas at my hidden base that's going to help. And then in a minute I'll start Widow Mine production.
Now, when you see Swarm Hosts, what's your preferred method of taking on the Swarm Host?
I'm a really big fan of Hellions, flanking them when the Locusts are not there. I also like using Widow Mines to flank them. I sometimes drop Hellbats or Widow Mines on top of them and burrow the Widow Mines and scan. Yeah, I usually have speed burrow if I do that.
Okay.
But if you want to be super safe, you get 2 Ravens at a time and 2 Vikings at a time, and then just make whatever ground army you need, and eventually you'll be able to overpower the Swarm Host with Hunter Seeker.
Okay.
Especially in lower leagues, they won't know how to defend it properly.
Right.
So if with Blinding Cloud like this, you have to kind of be careful. You can't just move in and attack him, which is why I'm kind of moving back. Like, I want to protect my tanks, yeah, but I don't want to give my Thors away for free. A lot of my tanks are still firing. On 3 bases, you can get 2 command centers at the same time when you want to take your 4th, because one's going to be a planetary and one's going to be an orbital. You want about as many orbitals as you have bases. At minimum. That's a minimum.
Okay.
Like, if the planetary got up, I would have made another orbital up top before I would have gotten my 4th for another 2 command centers, just to match the 3 base production, for the extra mule and scans and so on. So you can see I moved the Thors back, use SCVs to repair, and we hold.
Now, would you ever make your hidden base a planetary or no?
If it's not a planetary, so if they have mutas, it kind of doesn't matter because they'll just kill it. If it's Roach Hydra, yeah, you might be able to out-repair it, but you can also just lift it off and land it somewhere else and just mule.
Okay.
I'm a really big fan of the extra mules, to be fair.
Gotcha.
The mules and the scans, so I like it more that it's an orbital if it's hidden. But if you have this space and you want to take this one as well, I think you should make the second one a planetary almost always.
Yeah. Okay.
And now, since I have the explosion in the factories and I have the 2-2 kind of in a good spot, I can afford the gas to make the Widow Mines, and now we just go with Siege Tank Widow Mine from here. You want to have enough production to be able to switch to the Widow Mines, otherwise you won't be able to match it. So you only want to make mass Widow Mine if you have enough factories to support it.
And now, how do you engage with the Widow Mines? Do you siege the tanks and run the Widow Mines up, or
Siege the Widow Mines, move the siege tanks back usually. Or
so you run ahead with the mines, burrow them, and then move the tanks up to them?
Move the tanks away from them.
You're cutting in and out.
Sorry, move the siege tanks away from them.
Okay.
So
you
there's two
build it.
methods. If he doesn't have blinding clouds, then you can be more aggressive and just burrow the widow mines right as his army hits, and then move your army back away from the army so that your army doesn't get splashed, and you draw him further in. And then another method is you're gonna see in a minute is like a spread type movement, and then use the widow mines to burrow wherever he's coming from. So that's about to come up in just a second. So we're kind of like, so we got this little defense here, just enough to kind of deter any attack, you know.
Hmm.
And then this is our weak point. So we have to defend it just until the base gets up, and then we can leave some army there, and then we're going to be attacking in this direction, so we don't need to have anything there defending.
Gotcha.
So we're only keeping our army there while we secure the base. And confident we can secure it. So now we're kind of like, okay, so we're going to go for the attack. We take most of it. And we attack in this direction, so we take the widow mines. We just keep a few siege tanks. Not too much. So we kind of see where that he's trying to attack, so we plant them down or whatever. When you go the widow mine style, you have a lot of extra minerals. So don't be afraid to throw bases around the map as long as you can still keep maxing out. You know, you're not sacrificing command centers for army, don't do that. I just have a lot in production. I still have enough minerals to get quite a few more, and I'm almost maxed out, so that's kind of why I chose that. And I just secured another base, so I'm kind of technically on 5 bases. And then from there, if you can plant them at other bases as well, just so that you can get the extra gas geyser, so you can get more widow mines and siege tanks and upgrades.
Okay. So when you want to push into them with the siege tank widow mine, how do you do that exactly?
Oh, we're about to see that, and then
Okay.
it'll be easier to explain. You just want to kind of like funnel out areas he can go,
Mhm.
because 2 of those are going to be planetaries and some missile turrets in case he goes mutas. And then some starports here for like a Raven transition if I want it.
Mhm.
But give it just a second. So now we know, alright, we don't have to defend this place. We can take those units. We don't have to defend this place because we're attacking in this direction. So, and we're building a sensor tower up here so we can see if there's going to be a counterattack, and then we can, stop our units that are coming up this way to defend the 4th, the natural 4th.
Mhm.
And then we don't have to worry. So it's all about knowing where he's going to be, zoning out different attacks. Like I told you, wherever I'm going to put the planetary, I'm not attacking in that direction. But where the orbital is, okay, so where the orbital is, I am attacking from that direction.
Gotcha.
So now you can see as I'm pushing in, I'm moving my army around and sieging some siege tanks, but not all of them. Just the ones that get time to split up, and I burrow my widow mines at the bulk of his army. So if he pushed in right there, these 4 siege tanks would not have been sieged until they would have been behind the other siege tanks because of the blinding cloud.
Gotcha.
So when the Vipers are near you, you don't siege. It's a rule. You can only siege 1 or 2 at a time. You can never siege more than 1 or 2. That's why right now there's 1. We move our widow mines to where his army is, and we burrow.
You keep cutting in and out again.
Sorry, so we will only siege this one right here, and we move the widow mines to wherever his army is.
Gotcha.
Just 1 siege right there, 1 siege right there, so just 1 at a time.
And the blinding cloud stops the widow mine shot too, right?
No,
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
no. Let's say we just moved the mines over to where his army was.
Mhm.
And then, see how spread out our siege tanks are?
Yeah.
Only a few things could break this, like mutas or ultras or stuff like that. But then again, it would even still be hard because we got a lot of splash and a lot of oomph in our army with the Thors and the Widow Mine's initial shot. We don't unsiege everything. We're kind of splitting our army out. We know that he's got nothing, otherwise we wouldn't push this fast. We'd just be unsieging 3 or 4 at a time. But you can still see that I'm being kind of careful. Well, you should be able to see that in a second. There you go. So now I'm splitting them up. It's on slow, but I'm sieging just 1 or 2 at a time just to be safe. There you go. So we kind of just choked him out to his base. We can slow push the whole way there if we wanted. But that's just kind of how we would position that.
And what is your usual counter for Ultralisk transition?
I really like Thor Widowmine unless they go Ultralisk Baneling. Then I'm a pretty big fan of Thor Hellbat with some siege tanks.
Okay.
But I don't usually siege tanks, just 2 or 3 to snipe the Banelings.
Right.
And then I keep the Thor spread like an arc. You don't want them next to each other because an Ultralisk hitting a Thor will hit both Thors on either side of the Thor.
Hmm.
So you do want to be spread out. It'll make a huge difference. Chokes are nice, but not if he has Blinding Cloud. But again, they are even nicer though than despite Blinding Cloud if you are Widowmine heavy. But then if he has Banelings, then it's not, because he'll blow up all your mines. So you kind of got to think like that. Like, what does he have, and how do I position against it?
Gotcha.
It seems that we're just about out of time. Actually, did you have any last questions, or?
No, I think you covered everything.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you 5 of these replays that I played with him over Skype, and then you can always look up the Day 9 Daily, and I'll give you a link to where you can find like 95% of my replays. They automatically get uploaded when I stream.
To the replay SC2
Yeah.
or SC2 replay sets. Yeah. I
Yeah.
got that.
Okay. So that should help a lot.
Okay. Are all 5 of them the same style, or are they differing styles?
Different styles. I'm experimenting a little bit with his aggression. In this one, I was at when we were tied up, and it was for the win. I decided to use my safe build.
Gotcha.
So, but one of them is pretty defensive. One of them is kind of aggressive. Another one is super defensive, like insanely defensive. I don't move out very much at all. So it's just different things that you'll see, but you can take things away from there, like what did I scout and how did I respond to it and how do I think I can get away with it. So
Okay. Which map was that super defensive one on?
alters him.
Okay. That sounds like my speed.
It's insanely defensive.
Yeah.
I
I like being safe in my games.
I scout that he doesn't go anything aggressive for the next 3 minutes or so, or 4 minutes, so I drop down 3 orbital commands and I turtle on 5 orbitals and 2 bases.
Nice.
So super greedy, super defensive. Alright. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you.
You too. Thank you. I appreciate all your help.
No problem, and I'll give you all the links in just a few minutes.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.